All right, everybody, welcome back to the other guys on the Badlands Podcast Network. I got Will with me today. Jake couldn't make it. Will, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm busy time of year. We got annual cut down day tomorrow. Some of you listening will be today when this comes out. But yeah, I'm good, man. We're 2 weeks out. We're recording 8:05, 8:06. About 10 minutes from now in 2 weeks, we'll be all shitting our pants, waiting for the Jets to kick off in Santa Clara.
I was just saying to my brother yesterday that that Monday is going to be a non-productive day at work. I'm just going to sit there vibrating in front of the TV all day waiting for this thing to start.
Yeah, I don't even know that the Monday is my issue. It's going to be Tuesday between the amount of pods, tweets, and just utter either happiness in terms of like, dude, they're coming home 2-0. I feel it, or like, oh my god, they have got to beat Tennessee. They're not going to be home 0-2. Like, I just think we're gonna the anticipation to watch Rodgers in person. I mean, well, yeah, in person or watch him on TV, whoever you might be watching the game, mixed with just this team has so many expectations, and I feel like you want to dive fully in, and it's hard to dive in until you see it. And if they lose and they look good doing it, I know that sounds not like we want to hear, but if they lose 20-17, and you're like, I don't know, man, like they just went toe to toe with maybe the best team in the NFL. I feel really good about where they're at for week one. Yeah, it's exciting, man. Like leaving week one is always such a because you have hope either way. As long as the team doesn't
Yeah.
total, you're like even if they suck, you're like, all right, dude, 6 days till we get another game. Like Tennessee's not good. Like we got this. So
Yeah, once it gets rolling, it's great. I think to your point, like it's 2 years of build up at this point. We just need to see something. Like whether
fans have
you
had
think
blue balls for 2 years,
Yeah,
literally.
whether you think this experiment is going to work or whether you think it's not going to work, it's 2 years of stories about it either working or not working. And like, it's enough. We need to see it. I can't read about it anymore. I can't talk about it anymore. I can't hear about it anymore. I just need to see it. And I know you're saying like your tough time is after the game. I get nervous on the day of like, especially with night games. 1 o'clock games are one thing. You wake up in the morning, you got stuff to do, you do some errands, right? And then you sit down and the 1 o'clock games are rolling. Night games, man, I just sit there all day and like get irrationally nervous like I'm playing. It's ridiculous. I hate sitting around for night games. But that all said, let's get into things here. So we're going to hit on a couple kind of stories around the league and how and whether or not they impact the Jets or not. And then we're going to do some kind of would you rather's at the end here about guys that are fringe roster players, as has been talked about most of the weekend on the Badlands feed here. This is not a full 53 analysis. It really comes down to really those last 5 or 6 spots that we're talking about. And we kind of know who's in those crosshairs, right? So we're going to play a little game of pitting guys against each other. And it's not necessarily that the team will have to make a choice between these two players, but Will and I are just going to discuss the positives and negatives of each. But before we get to that, a couple trades today, a couple rumored availabilities today. We got John Mechie, we got Tim Patrick out there. Those are two guys. One is a guy that has been talked about in trade rumors for a long time. I think all the Broncos receivers, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Judy already got
Yeah.
traded. Like these are guys that are always getting talked about in trades. Mechie is a newer name. It's a guy that probably would have been picked a lot higher if he wasn't sick coming out of college, and he's rumored to be available now because it's a crowded wide receiver room in Houston. There was also a Malik Willis trade today, but it's good to see that those kind of post camp like roster flexing is starting to happen, where guys are saying, okay, here's what we're seeing in this room. Here's a guy that's expendable. Let's see what we can get for it. So what are your thoughts on some of these trades and whether or not, we'll see the Jets do anything or whether or not just the availability of these guys might impact what the Jets do?
Yeah, so I don't know that we see the Jets involved. We'll see. I mean, they've obviously been active in the receiver market. It's everything you see. It's basically like if the Raiders are bad, Devontae's a Jet, and we talked about it a million times. But I do wonder if that impacts the way the Jets approach this. I think if the Devontae carrot wasn't looming out there, do they make a move for a Tim Patrick and say low risk? We trade a 6-round pick in Austin Siebert, for for Tim Patrick, and hope he's the guy he was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, really before the two injuries. Is it John Mechie? The reason Mechie to me is interesting. I would take a shot there personally, but I understand why it's likely not to happen. The Jets, obviously, I've talked a lot about this. The Jets want to use Garrett Wilson in the slot a bunch and be able to have flexibility with him. They have Xavier Gibson, etc. again, not saying that Mechie isn't a better player than Gibson, but the Jets are high on Gibson. He's going to make the roster. So are they going to trade capital to bring in Mechie, who's primarily a slot guy, knowing they want to have that slot kind of role flexible? It just feels like to me, they probably pass on both, but I would kick the tires on both and just see. And Patrick's an interesting player. Again, he's probably better than Jason Brownley, right? And who we'll talk about. And if it's roster Jason Brownley versus roster, Tim Patrick, you probably want to take the Tim Patrick at all. So yeah, I would be interested in both, depending on the cost and what they would cost from a capital perspective. I cannot assume it's much. That said, it feels like the Jets are going to stand pat at receiver, especially with Mike Williams likely to do team drills this week. And on top of that, again, Devontae Carrot, it's not a great way to operate. I'm just telling you that I think that's the way they're operating, as if like Devontae is going to happen at some point. It's so the amount of leaks. It's like at this point, if it doesn't happen, it almost would shock you. So I don't know. Are you kind of in a similar spot as me? Or are you?
Yeah, no. I think the Devontae thing kind of complicates everything, right? You take that away, and it's probably a different outlook. To your point, Mechie's a more exciting move, but with the Devontae Carrot out there, you can't really make that move because why would you buy a subpar player now when you can get kind of probably a better player later? I think Tim Patrick is interesting, and again, you hit on it already, but like we're going to talk about Brownley a little later, and we have this. If we're talking about body type, like there's this spot on the Jets that everybody's a little worried about because we have one guy who has been a star in the league who's injured and we don't know what he's going to give us. We have another guy who's a fringe roster player. We have another guy who we signed to a big contract last year who has not lived up to it, right? And so there's kind of three murky bodies around that like big body outside wide receiver spot, and Tim Patrick would be a fourth murky body at best, but it's a swing, right?
Do you want to add more?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's kind of just adding more to that weird pile. And unless you're peeling one of those three guys off in order to bring that on, I'm not sure it makes much sense. And so at the end of the day, I agree with you. I don't really think anything's going to happen there. One more thing that I didn't warn you about, but I'm going to throw at you randomly here just because I want to see your reaction. React for me to Zach Wilson's night and his reaction to the news that Bo Nix is the starting quarterback.
Yeah, so I talked about this in all 32 already today. Happy for Zach, right? Like, good, glad he had a nice preseason. I'm glad he looks a little bit confident, and those are all nice things. This isn't meant to sound bitter in any way. This is just this is the God's honest truth. Playing well in the preseason as a quarterback, as Bill Belichick eloquently said, Aaron Rodgers just said it, we've all kind of said it. We got burned. The Jets fans got burned by a lot of. Zach Wilson was pretty good in the preseason last year, and he was playing against like the ones and twos today, or ones and twos, quote unquote. Most of the twos, obviously, last year in preseason. End of the fourth quarter game, end of the fourth quarter quarterback play in the fourth game or third game of a preseason. It's really hard for me to get excited about that. And Zach Wilson's talent's never really been an issue. While I do think a lot of people overrated his athleticism and physical talent to some extent. Again, glad he had a nice preseason. I am dubious of how much the Broncos have talked so glowingly about him. It always makes me think, his contract's half as expensive as it was before. Are they like trying to move him? Like, what are we doing here? And I don't know. Zach Wilson's issues just aren't. Like the throw that went everywhere. I think it was a 46-yard touchdown.
Yeah, well, let me stop you there. Yeah. That was a far throw. It was a hard throw. That was not a good NFL throw. No, can we pump the brakes on that, please?
So like even honestly, like in some ways, it actually wasn't even put in the right spot because if he puts that ball outside the numbers more, there's no chance for a safety to make a play on it. Any quality safety in the NFL is not only intercepting that, but is probably taking the head off of, even in 2024, taking the head off of that receiver. So
also there was another guy over the middle that he didn't use his eyes to draw him away from the guy on the right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like so exactly. Like I haven't seen anything. I've seen him move a little bit more fluid. Oh, he's protection now. I don't know, man. He took a safety like 2 days ago. I don't know why again, it's not being bitter Jets fans or anything like that. It's just the reality of it. If Zach Wilson's playing this year, things have gone horribly wrong for the Broncos. And secondly, until I see a defense that Zach Wilson has to play against that's not just a vanilla cover 2 shell When some team starts running man simulated pressures against him and he craters, which is what happened for 3 straight years with the Jets, then maybe I'll feel differently. But Sam Darnold started off really well in Carolina, and me and you are the biggest Sam Darnold people of all time. Even if Sam this year, I love Sam. I am a unabashed Sam Darnold defender, and we both are. Sam's going to need to show it for like 10, 12 weeks before
Yep.
anyone even buys it. And even then, they're going to be like, oh, 1 year fluke. I'm not getting excited over Zach Wilson having a pretty solid to good preseason game against the Cardinals 4-stringers. Sorry, I'm just not.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on Sam, especially like you just look no further than Baker Mayfield. Like he played, you have to do better than that to get more than that, right? And so, I think the best thing Zach Wilson did in the last few days was give the right political answer to, how do you feel about Bo Nix being named the starting quarterback? And he had a lot of practice at kind of bending the knee last year, so that wasn't anything new for him.
Yeah, he's used to it. He's used to getting not winning a job. That came. That was.
I knew we'd get there eventually. We just had to dig far enough, and then we'd get there.
A lot of practice to getting beaten out by a guy who's less talented.
All right, let's get into some of these would you rather. So we got 6 of them lined up here. We're going to start off on the offensive side. Most of these are going to be on defense, but we'll start off on offense. And I think this one, actually, you could make a case for. This really is like, which guy are you going to keep? Because I think if you're going to keep 4 running backs, you probably need to take away a wide receiver. And so we're going to go with Izzy Abanikanda and Jason Brownley, and I'll give you the floor first for the who and the why.
So I think both will make it, but if I had to choose one, I'm going to take Izzy here, and here's
why. Surprise!
So it is. I just want to clarify. I do think both make the roster and everything like that. The reason I mentioned I would keep Izzy is because he has the most unique skill set of the running backs in terms of like part of Izzy's problem and why I think he's played a lot better the last 3 weeks is a lot of like not being as decisive as he needs to be, but like the breakaway speed is elite. He's a 4.2 guy. Like there's no question about that. And he's a guy where, I don't know, Braylon Allen goes down for 2 weeks and Isaiah Davis rolls an ankle, and it's like, now we're playing, like, who's playing behind Breece Hall? And, like, I don't know. I just feel like the path to Brownley getting on the field this year is almost a little scarier in a sense. And I just feel like Izzy's a draft pick that, keeping 4 running backs, he has value on special teams. He should be a guy that should be able to return kicks. Whether he's returning kicks right now or not, he's a guy who you theoretically could throw back there in a pinch. Brownley's not playing. Brownley's not returning kicks. So, again, I think both make it, but I do think I'd probably keep Izzy just because, again, if we mention the Devontae angle, like the Jets aren't picking up another running back. I feel like there's a path where they, if you cut Brownley and you trade for Tim Patrick, like is anyone like upset about it? Whereas I feel like if you cut Izzy and then you sign like Valladay or, off the practice, like obviously they cut him already.
Deion Jackson or something.
Deion Jackson, they cut him already. It doesn't matter. It's just my point being like, you're kind of like, all right, man, we only really need 3 backs, but it would kind of suck if one goes down and all of a sudden we're like pretty thin at the spot. So I'll go with Izzy surprisingly, I guess.
Yeah, that is a surprise to me. I thought I was going to be going against you on this one. I'm going to keep it real simple. Izzy and Brownley to me are 2 really physically talented guys who struggle, I think, a little bit with mentally getting where they need to be for the NFL. And I think Izzy has shown that he's made steps positively in the right direction this preseason, and Brownley has not. To me, Brownley is still living off of a couple really good training camp catches last year and a little bit of college film that he came in pretty heralded as an undrafted guy. And I think we all got really excited about the physical traits there, but he just hasn't shown it. Like, it hasn't been on tape at all. He does not get open. He does not make tough catches. He doesn't do what he needs to do. And whether or not there was a pass interference at the end of the first half the other night, like, he still wasn't open, right? He didn't go and make the tough catch, even though he was getting yanked on the collar. So it's a high standard to hold somebody to. But I think when I just try to keep it really simple, it's just 2 physically talented guys and who has shown progress. One has, one hasn't, and it's really that simple. I could add to that there have been some precedents for teams keeping 4 running backs and using kind of a stable. The Niners, the last few years, have been a good example of that. Pre-Christian McCaffrey, there were a few years there, those Tevin Coleman years, Raheem Mostert, where like it just didn't matter who was running the ball behind them, and they would rotate them in a lot, and they gave them all a lot of burn. And so I think it's not outrageous to say that, and I'm not saying that Abanikanda is going to have a big role on the team, but it's not outrageous to say that he can not only make the team, but touch the ball here and there and maybe contribute in some way, shape, or form. So I think we're in agreement there. Next one, we'll stay on the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to go Kenny Yeboah and Anthony Ferkser. Go for it.
So I think what's going to happen. I mentioned it. I tweeted this morning. I think there's a few spots, and some of the guys we're talking about here will be a part of this. JBC, Yeboah, Xavier Newman. I'm missing somebody else that has a potential injury as well. I'm not sure injury wise where they're at. Right, we haven't gotten an update yet. A lot of these guys got hurt in the Isaiah Oliver's the other one. A lot of these guys got hurt in the last 6 days. All of them are obviously not key contributors that they're rushed back for week one. Did the Jets try to stash Yeboah on the practice squad and keep Ferkser for the first month, and knowing Yeboah will be back by week 4 and he's bigger, he's a core special teams guy? I'd probably keep Yeboah, and I know it kind of goes against what I was just saying, but he is the one core special teamer, and I'd rather keep Kenny Yeboah than Irv Charles. So in like a roster building sense, the Jets are going to keep one core special teams guy. They just are. They're not going to cut every single one of those guys. They preach special teams way too much to cut every single one of them. I'll go with Yeboah because I feel like he's a good run blocker. He knows the system, and he just seems like well liked, well respected in that room. He kind of is there's no real upside, but there's no downside to his game. And I'm sure you can say the same for Ferkser, but Yeboah, again, core special teamer. I feel like the Jets have kind of developed him into that, and I guess I'd roll with him. This is probably the one I feel the least of like I give a bleep about, because if either one of these guys is playing significant reps, it's kind of a shame. That means Rucker to Conklin's hurt.
I agree. This one's boring, and I like borderline don't even want to talk about it. I'm going to agree with you on Yeboah. I think like the point that has been made about Ferkser having some history and being a veteran that has done the H-back role and being a good guy that for Ruckert to have around, fine. Okay. But at the end of the day, like I want Ruckert to get healthy, and I want him to get back, and I want him to play, and I want to see Conklin catching passes, and whatever Kenny Yeboah can contribute on special teams, I'm okay with. To what you said, the last point there, like if either of these guys are seeing significant reps on offense, then we're in trouble. And like the only really argument I can make for Ferkser is being able to be a little bit of an army knife on offense and play the H-back role and move around and go in motion and do different things like that blocking. So I'm gonna try to go with like the best world possible for us to live in here, and that's the world where Kenny Yeboah makes the team and Ferkser is dispensable. So
yeah, I think that